What are your thoughts about John after his mother's death when he goes down to the dispensary where all the deltas are about to receive their soma supply, and he begins trying to rally them into a movement, into inspiring them to turn away from the dependence, from the lie, the drug induced euphoria. Um, where he throws away their supply out the window and he pleads with them to embrace freedom and to turn away from distraction. Um, you know, what about your thoughts that in our contemporary times is this a relatable that look at the malaise, look at the apathy that exists. These people, the streets of Portland, you see videos of homeless drug addicts camped out everywhere. And it's not just videos. I've myself driven through Portland and witnessed it. Um, the off ramps from when you're entering Portland, depending on which direction you're coming from, there's a variety of access points. There's US Highway 30, which connects to Interstate 405, which then allows you to get to I 5. There's also taking I 5 and 205 from Washington into Portland from the north and also from the south, as well as Highway 26. And but just driving in from I-5 north, you see people in Delta Park area, which is the northern part. When you cross into Portland, there's Hayden Island, there is Jansen Beach, Delta Park, and as you progress further south between where Delta Park is ends and where I-405 splits off from the main I-5, there is grassy slopes and off ramps. And you'll find tents lined along Interstate 5 all along the way to 405. Coming in or out using Highway 30, it's the same thing. You'll find broken down motorhomes and tents and whatnot scattered throughout, all the way from St. John's Bridge up to the 405 entryway. And this isn't just isolated to Portland. Ron DeSantis infamously pulled up the shit map, app picture of San Francisco, and then on top of it, oh look, our communist leader is coming from China. We need to get rid of the homeless. These things need to be brought up. You know, and maybe I'm just meandering from the point, but what kind of mentality goes into accepting that as the norm? What kind of drug induced euphoria? Or is it even a drug induced euphoria? Is it a conditioned brainwashing? Somebody posted on X earlier today, and it's been a repeated post, but it's that concept of bashing somebody in the, with fear conditioned responses over a prolonged period of time. It makes their brain malleable into essentially and it infantilizes. I don't want to keep using that word over and over again, but that's in essence what's going on. It infantilizes these people into just existing rather than living. And John the Savage recognizes this. He sees these people, the deltas in particular, because the deltas and the epsilons in the novel are essentially brain dead uh, workers, slaves. They have no existence except for the induced euphoria of the soma. Um, and that's what we're seeing. And you've got Seattle, you've got Portland, you've got all these cities in California and other places around the country where these people are just existing in a drug hazed stupor, unable to function. So you've got John the Savage warning these deltas, and what happens? The police arrive, detain him, Helmholtz Watson, and Bernard Marx, where they go to meet up with the controller, Mr. Mond, who essentially gives us an insight into what it is that they're going to uh, be sentenced. And our society, there's such an apathy, there's such a malaise about the situation, about these people and these the consequences that they're in. People are crying it out, but little is being done. I don't know. I feel like I'm getting lost in the weeds here, but it's the conditioned mentality versus the independent thinker. And I find it fascinating that 90 years ago, Mr. Huxley was able to, recognize things that were going on in his time and in previous ages, and be able to recognize that they would become even more severe in the future. Because I feel that many of us, in our own way, are John the Savage, attempting to warn the masses of the distractions, of the apathy, and that it is the cause of their own, enslavement and ruin. And going back to the controller, Mustafa Mond, when they had been arrested and met with him, he said that their society had outliers, that they had these individuals who refused to conform, and that he himself had to make that decision whether he wanted to conform or be one of the outliers. That they had designated islands for these innovators. Well, in addition, as a contrast, in Atlas Shrugged, you didn't have a state approved refuge that Huxley has in Brave New World. Instead, you had a privately purchased piece of land referred to as Galt Gulch. One is sanctioned by the state as a compromise of existence. The other is, at first, a refuge, then an outright sanctuary from the state's overreach. And then later, Mond even describes that these islands are labs, in essence, experiments. So the question to you, which one is more realistic? The concept of Gulch, in which you buy a piece of land and retreat from the state's overbearing, overreaching, authoritative behavior, or a state's compromise, where in reality it turns out to be just a lab, an experiment facility. And then another aspect I want to touch on is the concept of better to die young and beautiful than old and frail. That's been a mantra for ages. Um, for hard living, fast living, YOLO, you only live once. How well does Mr. Huxley present our current celebration of that, in his novel? And can that be something that you can draw from in the book that you can apply to now? Youthfulness of the past 70 years has been tied with rebellion, but in Brave New World, youthfulness is about conformity. And finally, Brave New World was written by man and ends that essentially men are pliable and willing to agree to these compromises, whereas Atlas Shrugged was written by a woman and it ends with men resorting to have to take up arms to push back against the totalitarian state. Is this a dichotomy between men and women and how they see the world, or is this just two different viewpoints, and which one is more real or realistic in your opinion?